And this is me trying to figure out how to wrap the strap around my wrist.
Can't remember. Afternoon, folks. Have you ever heard of the phrase photography is like a jigsaw puzzle? I don't think I have, so I'm going to claim it. I mean, somebody's probably mentioned it before at some point. Definitely somebody has said it before at some point, but I'm claiming it anyway.
What I mean by that phrase, photography is like a jigsaw puzzle, is that when you're trying to compose a scene through your viewfinder to take a photo, essentially what you're trying to do is put everything together so it fits perfectly. You're trying to piece together the puzzle, which is the scene you're looking at and all the elements in it, however many there may be. And when it comes to focal lengths, more often than not, the wider the lens, the more elements or pieces of the puzzle there are going to be in your scene to piece together.
Speaking of wider lenses, I'm actually using this 15mm f1.7 from Viltrox, which they actually kindly sent out to us. This might well be too wide for me, I'm not sure. I think I've got a few nice shots so far and I'll see what I can get. Might not get to use it too much today, but definitely look forward to using this thing a little bit more. And if it's anything like the other Viltrox lenses we've used, the build quality seems identical, it looks the same, so I'm expecting it to be quite decent. But 15mm, quite wide for me and my style. But let's see what I can get.
So I just want to jump in with a little bit of information. Me and Christina actually started off with, well, our first proper camera was actually a Sony RX10 III, which is quite a random camera, not something you see too often, but it's essentially sort of for sports and wildlife photography. It had like a 1-inch sensor, but it had like a 60 to 600mm zoom lens or something. So we've kind of went from that to the Fujis and then slowly got some wider lenses and stuff. So starting from the extreme long end when it comes to lenses to a 15mm today, so quite a difference. With the Sony, I was able to just zoom way in really tight on things, and it was handy because I could get photos you just couldn't get with wider lenses. But because you can just punch in and don't have to compose a wider scene, it makes things a bit easier and you don't have to think as much about composition. With wider lenses, you can't really rely on shallow depth of field or tight crops. You have to pay attention to the entire frame and where to place things in the composition. With wider lenses, especially primes, you also have to move around more with your feet, and by doing this, you can end up really improving your compositions. You can't just set up a tripod and hope it works, you're forced to move around a bit more, and more often than not I find this leads to you finding a better way to shoot a scene. You start to train your brain the more you do this, and then you start seeing compositions in wider scenes. Scenes that maybe would have seemed a bit chaotic to you before, you can now see the potential for photos there, and you have the ability to compose things properly to create good photos because you're used to dealing with it.
We just grabbed ourselves a little coffee there. The time we were in was quite busy. Actually quite nice for photos, I think, but just so many cars everywhere. So had our coffee, just going for a little drive here. I just want to quickly show you, or try and sort of explain how I'm trying to line up a frame with this 15mm lens, how it looks, and just kind of how tricky it is. It's fun, but very wide, and yeah, there's a lot in the frame. So I'm kind of at this little pier bit, and I think there might be a shot here, so let's see. So the light is coming and going here. It's quite overcast, so we're just getting wee pockets of light, which is what I'm trying to wait for. There's a lot kind of going on in this scene, and obviously with this lens it makes it very wide, so I'm trying to include more things in the foreground to obviously try and explain how I'm composing a wider lens shot. We've got this private property sort of wall and sign here in the foreground. Got the little arch that the water's going under on the left, sort of leads round all the boats. I'll show you this on camera anyway, point out the little things that I'm trying to do. There's a little tiny boat over there that I'm trying to frame between the mast of the other boat. Just piecing together all the pieces of the puzzle, essentially. I think it'll work though. Looks nice through the viewfinder, and that's always a good thing, because when I take it into Lightroom, put an edit on it, should be pretty nice, I think.
So with these wider lenses, you really start to learn how to compose scenes better, because you have to be aware of quite a few more things in the scene. But with the wider lenses, it also kind of allows you to tell a little bit more of a story with the scene that you're shooting. So I just quickly want to share a few shots that I took and sort of explain the compositions a little bit and what I'm thinking when I'm shooting a wider scene. Now, I haven't really been using wide lenses that long. I've been using the 23mm quite a bit recently, but that's only been the past few months, and obviously the 15mm now. So some of these shots aren't necessarily wide angle lenses or anything like that, but the same things sort of apply. So when I'm framing up a scene like this one, first of all, I'm trying to move to the spot where I think everything looks pretty good. Everything's sitting sort of where I want it to be. I then pay a bit more attention to certain elements in the frame and make sure that they're not overlapping. So for example, the house in the distance has its own space and nothing's overlapping it. Then the electric pole on the lane here is placed in between the two trees just to give it a little bit of space. And then this fence that's running along the left hand side here has these wooden posts along it, and I'm just making sure that these aren't kind of half in the frame, half out. It just makes things a little neater when there's a little bit of a gap from the edge of the frame. In this case, it's very small, but it is there. I'm then paying attention to the gate on the right hand side and the rusty post here that's holding it up. It again is placed between the two trees in the distance, and it's also not overlapping the sky. If I had have held the camera lower, then that post also would have peeked over the mountains, and that is not really what I was looking for. We also have these purple weeds, I can't remember what they're called, on the right hand side here, and it is overlapping the green bush behind it, which just makes it stand out a little bit more instead of overlapping the gate. And then we have the shadow in the foreground here. I could have moved forward a little bit or cropped this out completely, but I like that it adds a little bit of contrast in the foreground and you can see how the sun is shining into the frame. Oh, and one more thing I'm forgetting here, the foliage or green bush on the right hand side of the gate here. I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't overlapping the mountain and was within the horizon line, which it is, and I just think that's really neat looking, and it means that the only thing overlapping the horizon is the electric pole, which I think works. And then we have this shot from Lake Como, which I shot with my Nikon FE, my film camera, and this isn't the widest shot, but a lot of the same things apply. So what I was looking out for was, first of all, the shutter on the right hand side here. I wanted to make sure that it was not touching the edge of the frame. So like I said with the previous shot, everything has a little bit of space from the edge of the frame. So I was either going to keep the shutter in with a little bit of gap or completely remove it from the frame. We also have the wall with the red post box on it here. I just wanted to make sure it obviously wasn't overlapping the guy sitting behind it. And then we have this yellow sign with the shadow hitting the wall here. And I just wanted to make sure that that shadow was not overlapping the shutter and it was on the nice open bit of wall here because it just looks quite clean. And then the only other thing I was really keeping an eye on was the flag post here and the lamp post. I just wanted to make sure that they had their own space and they weren't overlapping anything. And it's also quite satisfying that these little pillars on top of the building on the right just angle off nicely towards the corner of the frame, which just makes it quite satisfying to look at. And here we have another shot from Lake Como. I know this is a very simple shot, but when shooting wider angle lenses, you do get a lot of this right here. Not this exact fence, obviously, but things really close to you or close to the bottom of the frame. And you just have to be aware of this because it's easy to focus more on the scene in the mid and background of a shot and miss things like this. What I want to do is give every element in my photo as much space as I can, so even though this shot is quite simple, if I had have held the camera a little lower, this little fence in the corner would have overlapped the small wall in the distance, leaving no space and just making the scene look a little bit messier. Because I held the camera a little bit higher and stood a little bit closer to the fence, there's now a nice gap between that fence and the wall, and we have some nice sort of negative space where the stones on the ground laid between the two. That last shot of the tree at Lake Como and the little fence is so simple, but I always remember it for the colours and just the calmness of that scene. It's quite a simple shot, but I really like it. It's probably one of my favourites actually. I really need to get some photos up on this wall, and I think that one might be one I might have to put up. I kind of want to see that as a print. I briefly mentioned a few minutes ago about being able to sort of tell more of a story with a wider lens. What I sort of mean by that is, if you have a scene you want to photograph wherever or whatever that scene is or what's in it, obviously the more elements you're able to include, the more someone looking at the photo is able to take in and try and make sense of where the photo might be or what might be happening. That's what I mean by being able to tell more of a story through it. You can kind of reveal more of what's in the area or what might be going on. Obviously, the more you punch into a scene or zoom in, the more you're cutting out, the less that tends to be in the frame then. So it might be a little bit harder for a viewer to maybe understand where that photo is or what's going on. That's kind of what I mean by telling a story with the photo or composition that you're shooting. This bracelet's probably not a great idea for recording videos every time. Put my hand down, touches the table. Apologies. I really do enjoy shooting a little bit wider now. The 15mm is probably a little bit wide for me, and I definitely won't go any wider, but I do like it. It's a little bit more challenging, and as I mentioned, it's fun to kind of try and put the pieces of a puzzle together on a wider scene. I also feel like I'm getting better as a photographer now, so when I go to most areas I find that I'm actually able to find compositions that I definitely wouldn't have before, and you notice that more with a wide lens because I'm able to piece things together to make scenes look nice that before I wouldn't even have thought of taking a photo of. I would have just thought things are a little bit too messy, I need a tighter lens to be able to narrow in on a subject, which I still like, but now I'm more confident with wider lenses and able to get photos in places that I think are probably a little bit tricky, or definitely would have been tricky for me a year ago even. I think that's enough blabbering for this one, but just before I finish, I would like to maybe do like a review style video or maybe even a live stream where I get to check some of the photos out from you guys. I wouldn't say critique them, but I'll give my opinions on them, take a look at them. I think it would just be fun, and it's nice for me to be able to see some of the photos that you guys take. So if that's something you're interested in, jump in the Discord. The link is below. There's a section for photography. Drop your photo in there and I will pick some of them out and review them in a video if I get enough of them in there. Or you can email them if Discord isn't your thing, but Discord would make it a lot easier. I was also toying with the idea of starting up a Reddit thread, but I don't know. But yeah, if you'd like to maybe be featured in the video, join the Discord and drop your photo in. Hopefully this one was helpful, and yeah, maybe give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. As we always say, take it easy, don't be a stranger. Definitely a lot more blabbering probably than was needed for that one. Sometimes I feel like I do too much talking in these videos, but how else do you explain something? By the way, I bit my tongue really badly earlier when I was eating something, and I feel like you could probably tell with how I'm speaking. Feels kind of weird, but yeah, just in case you were wondering.